today I have these chunks of foam that I salvaged from a project that we did at work. And what I'd like to try and do is use them to create mountain backdrop pieces that can also be used as table dressings that are not just scenic background drops. So you can see these are really thick. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of, I believe this is 2-inch foam. So, you know, it's 10 inches tall. The conventional jigsaw or anything that I would use to cut this that is powered will not work to cut through that. Hot wire wand, like a foam cutting tool, that also I don't have. So I'm going to bring out these guys, see what they do. First one's your standard hardware saw or hardware store. You can pick that up. This one is a concrete handsaw, which I'm not really sure where I got it. It may have been one of my father's tools. And then this one here, I think this one will do the trick. Pretty long, and the teeth are all pretty big on these two saws. So that might give me the texture that I'm looking for on the rock facings, which would speed up the sculpting of the rocks. This one's a little more fine, and although it might give me cleaner cuts, I'd probably have to go back in and detail the rock formations even more, even using this. So here we go. We're gonna try this out. And first I'm gonna start by, so these are already pre-shaped pieces. To maximize the most usage out of these, you've got to figure, I'll use this model. This model here has a base size of about 4 inches. So I'm going to use that to plot out my sections. I really don't want this full length to be one large section, because the tables are usually maximum 4 foot wide. This here is almost 2 foot wide. So I'm gonna go with the smaller dimension, this side here, because this side will allow me to maximize the size of this when I chop it up, and also it'll keep it within the parameters of shorter sections, but it's still not too small. This is an average miniature. Bad lighting. This is a 1-inch base, so you figure this guy here standing in front of this mountainscape that would be sculpted. It's still enough of a backdrop to not have too many breaks in the rocks distance-wise this way, so I'm going to parse out the sections of this piece into, actually what I wanted to show you with this guy was his base is pretty big. So like I said before in some of my other videos, I use usually, you know, a large size or you know, a base that's within 4 inches or so to size out my terrain scenic pieces so that models can actually interact on top of them. So with this guy being roughly 4 inches wide, I'm probably gonna go ahead and make this piece like 6 inches. So that line right there will indicate the depth of the piece or the pieces that I will go ahead and sculpt out of. So looking at this, I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections out of this one big block. So I'm gonna go ahead and scribe that. Eyeball. And those lines can be rough lines because I'm gonna wind up cutting it anyway. And I'm not even going to try the fine-tooth saw. I'm gonna go straight into it with this concrete saw, see what it does. Chunk. Now, you can see this yellow foam here. This is like an expansion foam used for insulating around cracks or around windows and doors, the cracks that might be in between the framing and the piece or the object. Here, it's actually used to bond the sheets of foam, which it works really well actually. When you spray it out of the can, it's pretty tacky and sticky and it gets everywhere and it's hard to get off of anything. But here what we did was we sprayed the foam just a little bit on each piece, stacked the pieces, and then wrapped the pieces with like a bundle wrap, like a plastic shrink wrap. That way, when this yellow foam expanded, it wouldn't push apart the parts and they stayed together. And that really formed a solid bond between foam and foam. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the rest of this out. Another piece. This one is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And go ahead and make more sections out of it. This one's the same height, smaller chunk. And I'm going to use this one as a base to make a really high mountain. So, space-wise, 2 of these sections can fit on top of this one piece. So what I'll do is maybe cut a funky shape, ergonomic shape, allowing me to use both sections somewhat equally. So that way When I shape this can be a base for one of these, or it can be somewhat of a base for one of those. How I'm gonna cut that? Well, that's gonna be a trick. I'm not gonna try to cut this weird squiggly line. Instead, I will cut straight through to a certain point, maybe to here, and then cut this line, and then maybe just try my best to score this, or even get the small saw with the finer teeth in here somehow, or I'll probably just snap it. Let's see. I'm going to show here is a quick way to mask these seams on the foam so that when I paint it, certain areas look like it's one piece. Now, if you can see here, this shape is a continuous shape from this section to this section. It shares that seam. So I will follow wherever these shapes transfer from one piece to the next. That is where I will seam. So basically this whole line here, with the exception of maybe right here, there's a little ledge. I might do it anyway. But here, in this area, it's like a flat shelf plateau area. So in there, I will not seam or put the solution or the glue that I'm going to show you. So here we go. I've got a little container of PVA glue, Elmer's glue, school glue, a bucket of sawdust, and a cup of water, dirty water, that I'm going to keep this brush. This will be my dusting brush. I'll keep that in the cup of water, and you'll see why. So this is a little, I don't know, I guess it's a glue brush of some sort that I got from work. So I'm gonna go ahead and proceed to fill this gap. We're going on generously. I'll take some sawdust. This out of the way so I don't need it in there. And I just lightly sprinkle along that crack. Do that. And again, I didn't do the shelf here because even though there is a crack, it won't matter so much when you paint it. That'll pretty much disappear. And also it allows to show separation of the rock form on top of this plateau. So it's like a false interpretation of a real situation or natural situation of a rock formation. So I'm taking the brush that I had dipping in water. If it's dry, it's going to be a little harder to work with. And then instead of going with the seam this way, I'm going to go across the seam to hopefully push the sawdust in that into the groove. And by me keeping the brush wet while I do this, not too wet, but keeping the glue off the brush, but also allowing the water to flow, it washes away or spreads the sawdust away from the seam.